The Sonos Arc, the first Atmos-capable soundbar from Sonos, was launched in the year 2020 in June, just 3 months back. When it was launched alongside two other products, which is the Sonos Sub Gen 3 as well as the refreshed Sonos 5. The Arc has gotten its fair share of launch problems at the start, one of them being the weak bass, or rather it just sounded bad. It's not that it's weak, it was there, but it was wobbly and it just didn't sound good at all. So in the last 3 months, there has been several releases of the new S2 firmware as well as the S2 app software updates. Today we are at version 12.0.6 for the software, the app, S2 app, and we are at 12.0.5 for the Arc firmware. Did this solve the problem? Let's find out today. So as usual, I like to give you my upfront summary and answer the question even before I start the video proper and before I go on deep and dive into all the results and the testing that I've done. But today I have outdone myself. I have given you the answer in the title of this video itself. So yes, the Sonos Arc bass issue has been fixed. For good, for real this time. So you have no time to stay around for the rest of the video. Go ahead, go out to the store and buy it, go online and order it. Be assured that the bass issue has been fixed. There's no more wobbly bass, there's no more rattling in the bass, and the Arc sounds good. I could play it for you, but I don't have the setup ready. If you want to hear how it sounds like after the fix, I can show you a video which I'm going to link up there. It basically is the performance of the Sonos Arc. I've queued up 14 songs for it. You can audition the Sonos Arc using those 14 songs. It runs for about 40 minutes. It's recorded with pretty high quality. You can hear for yourself what 12.0.6 software and 12.0.5 firmware does for the Sonos Arc. Hear for yourself, see whether you're happy with the bass. This song that I was playing earlier, it was actually recorded as well. So just to give you a short flavor, here it goes. So there you go. I believe the problem has been fixed. It sounds great. The bass notes are all clean and nice. So if you have time to stick around, stay around, and we will dive in deep on how this has been resolved and the kind of readings and the testing that I've done to verify that it has been resolved. So when the Sonos Arc was first launched, one of the problems was the very tinny highs and it sounded shrill and sharp. I don't think everybody heard that problem. I, for myself, I didn't find it so much of a problem. I think it could be the sensitivity of the ears, and we are all different human beings, so we perceive these kind of sounds differently. For me, the high frequencies coming out from a soundbar needs to be a little bit higher because you need to steer the sound, and high frequency sounds are easier to direct and bounce off the walls for a perception of a surround sound from a soundbar format, which is just physically speaker cones right about 4 feet apart. So another problem was the connectivity with HDMI ARC ports. So some users were reporting that they weren't getting Atmos, but it is not just a Sonos issue. The TV needs to support it. The streamer that you're using, be it the NVIDIA Shield 2019 or the Apple TV 4K, all these compatibilities come into play, and right now, even right now, at this point in time, with the exception of spending quite a bit more money buying a Arcana HD Fury to solve the problem, you still might not get Atmos sound, lossy or otherwise, through your HDMI ARC port. So the most prominent problem at launch was the bass issue. When you pitch this guy with the older play bass or even the play bar or even the beam, the bass on this guy sounded terrible. They rushed out a patch quite early on. I think about 2 weeks into launch, they rushed out a patch, and then they went on to 1.0.3, which is another 2 weeks later. And I did a video on that. I can link it up here if you want to. You can look at that. And even that didn't solve the problem. It kind of solved the wobbling bass issue at 40 Hertz, but it moved it away from 40 Hertz to 50 Hertz. And there was some kind of rattling sound that was happening in the speaker cones with 12.0.3 firmware revision. So today we are at 12.0.6 revision, and this is the version that will solve your bass issue from the Sonos Arc. So let's take a look at how it sounded like from the start. So at launch at 12.0.0, that was the curve that you are looking at. If you're looking at it, you can see a lot of jagged edges. Now this is playing a 40 Hz tone. By right, a 40 Hz tone, continuous monotone should look relatively flat, but you can see the jagged edges going throughout the curve. Now when that happens, it is as though either the amplification ran out of power or the cones have reached the limit and the DSP is pulling it back. So when it's trying to play a 40 Hz tone, it pulls it back, it goes again, and it pulls it back again. And it happens within milliseconds. And you can hear in terms of how the bass sounds like that is wobbly. Let me play a short clip here. Yep, so you hear the wobbling sound, right? So that was kind of semi-resolved with 12.0.3 firmware. Now at 12.0.3 firmware, the jagged edges were a little bit less pronounced, you can see here, but it is still nowhere near flat. So the right curve to see is what I'm going to show you up here. And when you see a 40 Hz tone being played, this was played out of my Phantom reactors, you feed a 40 Hz monotone inside, you see that the flat response curve is completely just hearing 40 Hz, nothing going up and down, it's not jagged, and the sound comes across as clean bass. So let's move all this away. Today with 12.0.6, the software version 12.0.6 with the firmware 12.0.5, you will see this curve. Now this is a flat response curve, and it shows when you're trying to play the sound. I'm going to play a series of tones here. I'll give you a sampling of how this guy is sounding, going at 40 Hz, 50 Hz, all the way up to 100, and maybe I'll make a jump to the 120 Hz. And just listen to it for yourself. Go. So you can hear, right, at every bass note from 40 all the way to 120 Hz, you're not going to hear rattling issues, you're not going to hear wobbling bass, and there is no pulling back of volume. All these as of version 12.0.3 firmware was still there. The wobbling bass was at about 50 Hz, the rattling sound was coming in at about 40 Hz, and at about 80 Hz when you're powering it at full volume, the DSP was going to pull down the volume of the bass response of the Sonos Arc. So it wasn't a pleasant experience. So 12.0.3 didn't quite fix it. 12.0.5 firmware fixed it. So in order to make sure that you are running your Sonos Arc on the correct firmware and the software version, go inside your Sonos app, go into System, and go into About System. The software itself, the S2 platform, the software that is running on your phone, should be at 12.0.6. The firmware, if you go and scroll down to your Sonos Arc, you'll be able to see that it should be at 12.0.5. If it is not, make sure you make that upgrade today. So a lot of viewers were asking and wondering, and a lot of Sonos fans around the world were wondering, is it a hardware issue, something that cannot be fixed with OTA updates over the air? I gave my confidence to Sonos and I thought that they will be able to solve this, and today it is solved, right? So, but what I was wondering was whether they were going to solve the problem by reducing the bass response, by reducing the power, because when you reduce the power, when you reduce the requirements and the bass output, well, most of the problems of the bass will go away. If you're going to be listening with it with a sub, you wouldn't have heard the problems in the first place. But what if you were just going to buy the Arc without the sub or without any surround or even the 5s to try to augment the bass duties of this guy? So on the Arc itself, I was afraid that they will solve this problem by reducing the bass frequency response. But let's take a look. I did a frequency response sweep, and this curve here shows that it is still putting out reasonable output at about 40-45 Hertz. So the bass output is still strong. In fact, there's still a reasonable bump between 40 to 100 Hertz thereabouts that is coming from the Sonos Arc itself. Right at the high frequency end, the 12-13 kilohertz, you will still see a bump there. Now that bump, like I explained earlier in my video, it is important for the Sonos Arc to try to direct the sound firing off from the side woofers so that it can bounce off your side walls and reach behind you to give a sensation of a simulated surround sound. Even if you're not using physical speakers at the rear of your room, you will still be able to hear some semblance of surround sound coming from just the soundbar itself. And for that, you need the higher frequencies to be slightly bumped up and more pronounced, which explains the peak at the 12 or 13 kilohertz or so. So today's video, it wasn't intended to be long. I just wanted to give all my viewers an update that the Sonos Arc bass issue has been conclusively resolved. So it ends a chapter, right, in the launch issue of the Sonos Arc. Is this the best Atmos soundbar you can get for the money? I am not sure. Different people will have different requirements. This one doesn't have HDMI input. The only way you can get sound from into this guy, from the TV rather, is through the ARC port or the eARC port. ARC port for lossy Atmos using Dolby Digital Plus. And for the eARC port, you will be able to pass full bandwidth Atmos and you will get lossless Atmos. So while it may not sonically be the best, or in terms of the inputs, it may not be the most flexible Atmos soundbar that is available in the market today, I am a strong believer in Sonos. It has an ecosystem that will serve you well. And when you buy into a Sonos ecosystem, basically you're buying into flexibility, right? You can just buy the Sonos Arc soundbar, or you can pair it with a sub for more low-end thumb, or you can pair it with real physical surround sound speakers, either the Play 1 or the Sonos One, One SL, IKEA Symphonics bookshelf, the Play 3s, the 5s, the old Play 5s, multiple options for you to pair this guy to set up your real surround sound system. So that's the end of today's video, short video. If you have not already updated the firmware and the software on your phone as well as on this guy, go right ahead, do it. Enjoy your Sonos Arc. I'll see you in my next video.